If someone has mentioned to you that you speak a little too fast, you may be losing your audience when you speak. Now, you may also be wondering why a fast rate of speech is so problematic. In this episode, you'll hear why and how to slow down. Hello, my name is Lynda Waltner Stucky, and in this episode, I'm going to give you reasons why rate of speech is important, what a normal rate is, and show you how to slow your rate of speech with a few simple techniques. We communicate through language, and if your message isn't understandable, really for any reason at all, your message is not going to be understood and you will lose your audience. When I sometimes assess a leader's speech, language, and voice, and I have to break the news to them that their rate is just too fast, I often hear from them that they feel a fast rate of speech is necessary to show their competence and their confidence. But the problem really is that it has an opposite effect almost. It can appear that you are nervous, which may put your listener on edge. The other problem with speaking too fast is that it is monotone, meaning that you come off appearing rather businesslike, not very approachable. It's a lot easier to sound friendly and approachable when your speech is slow and conversational with a lot of pitch variation or something called intonation. The rate of speech, or how fast or slow someone speaks, is an important aspect of verbal communication because it can impact how easily and effectively the message is received and understood by the listener. Here are 6 reasons why rate of speech is important. Number 1, comprehension. Speaking too quickly can make it difficult for the listener to comprehend what is being said. A slower rate of speech allows your listener to absorb and process the information, making it so much more easy to understand. If other distractions are present, such as a foreign accent, word fillers, or something else, it will make it even more difficult to understand the fast speaker. Number 2, clarity. A slower rate of speech can also help you to enunciate your words more clearly and distinctly. If I talk really fast, it's really hard to make those sounds really distinct. So this can improve overall clarity and understanding. Clarity also comes from succinct speech. It's a lot easier to craft messages succinctly when you are speaking slower. Number 3, emphasis. Varying the rate of speech can help to emphasize important points or convey some emotion that you might be feeling. A slower rate of speech can add weight and significance to certain words or phrases too. Number 4, engagement. Speaking too slowly can be monotonous and boring, while speaking too quickly can be overwhelming and confusing. A moderate rate of speech can help you keep your listener engaged and focused on the message. Number 5, cultural differences. In some cultures, a faster rate of speech is considered normal and expected, while in others, a slower rate of speech is preferred. It's important to be aware of these cultural differences and adjust your rate of speech based on the audience that you are speaking to. Number 6, the perception. The rate of speech that you use can also influence how the speaker is perceived by your listener. Speaking too quickly can be perceived as nervousness or anxiety, and again, not very approachable, while speaking too slowly can be seen as being lethargic or maybe not very smart or even disinterest. And of course, this is just the perception. Finding the right pace can help convey confidence and professionalism. So, what is a normal rate of speech? A normal rate of speech is approximately 140 to 160 words per minute. Now, there are going to be times when you want to speak at the lower end of that range, and other times that you might speak at the higher range. When you are speaking and giving complicated information that's difficult to digest, or maybe you're talking to a non-technical audience with technical information, that would be a time to really slow things down and speak at the lower end of the range, 140 words per minute. Another time that it might be useful for you to speak at a slower rate is if you have a foreign accent. So if you have a foreign accent or a regional accent that is interfering with your intelligibility anyway, a slower rate of speech is going to be very, very beneficial. And finally, we use a slower rate of speech for serious kinds of information that is being conveyed to the audience, because a serious nature it takes and requires a slower, more solemn type of speech. You might be able to get away with a higher rate of speech when you are telling jokes or perhaps more frivolous kinds of conversations that you might have with friends and family. That's a time to actually use a faster rate of speech. How do you find your rate of speech? And that's a really good question. What I normally do is I have a reading passage that I use when I'm assessing my clients. I ask them to read it as if they are speaking to someone else. I try to get them not to read, because reading is generally a little bit faster, but rather read it at a conversational level. Try to match how they speak normally in conversation. This passage is used specifically to find the rate, and I ask them to read for 1 minute. And after 1 minute, I make a mark on my reading, and after they've completed the entire reading, I then count the number of words that they have spoken during that time. And that gives me the rate of speech in words per minute. In the description below, you will find a link to one of my blogs where I talk about rate of speech a little bit more in depth. And I give examples of all the different rates of speech from 140 words to 200 words per minute. So how exactly do you slow your rate of speech down if you have always been a fast talker? Well, I'm going to give you 5 steps. The first step is to become aware. Record yourself reading a passage and count the number of words in a minute that you have read this passage. Remember that when you are reading the passage, you are trying to be as conversational as possible. Don't speak it at your reading rate, but rather speak it at your conversational rate. Then count the words. See where you fall in the 140 to 160 words range. Step number 2, you've discovered that you are too fast. So what do? You can lengthen your vowels. Sometimes people speak so quickly, especially words that are longer in length. Specifically, volunteer. Any of these words that have more syllables than 2 or 3 are words that oftentimes become sort of crunched. So the word might be specifically, and they'll say specifically. And everything is reduced to a very short word. So if I lengthen the vowel and I say specifically, that really helps to slow down the word. Not only the word, but also the entire passage will be read at a much slower rate. The third step you can take is to practice pausing at normal punctuation. A comma will receive a shorter pause than a period. So you might put a 1 second pause at a comma and maybe a 2-second pause at the periods. And try reading a passage of some sort by just lengthening the pauses in between sentences and at commas. The fourth step you can take is to really exaggerate your mouth movements. It is really hard to speak quickly when you are using a big, wide open mouth and exaggerating your mouth movements. So try that as well. And finally, step number 5 is to practice, practice, practice so that you can get used to hearing what it sounds like and also the feel. This is what's going to be necessary in order to incorporate a slower rate of speech in your conversational speech. I would also recommend that you record it so that you can listen back and hear what a difference it makes. I hope you have found this video helpful and are convinced to speak at a slower rate so that your audiences will always understand you. If you like this video, please subscribe, like, post in the comments anything about your rate of speech and maybe the difficulty you have in terms of changing the rate of speech.